The scream tore through the sterile hospital corridor like shattered glass. Amelia's back slammed against the wall as manicured nails clawed at her face. She raised her arms to protect her swollen belly, 7 months pregnant, vulnerable, alone. The woman attacking her was beautiful in that cold, sharp way that money could buy. High cheekbones, designer clothes, and eyes burning with a hatred that made Amelia's blood freeze. "You think you can keep him?" The woman, Selena, shrieked, her Chanel perfume mixing with the antiseptic smell of the hospital. "You pathetic little nobody." Amelia tried to push her away, but another shove sent her stumbling backward. Pain shot through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching her stomach as the baby kicked in distress. Before you keep watching, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. I love hearing from viewers around the world. Security. A nurse's voice cut through the chaos. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. 2 orderlies grabbed Selena's arms, pulling her back as she thrashed and spat venom. "Get off me." She started it. "That woman attacked me first." Amelia slid down the wall, trembling, her hospital gown torn at the shoulder. The baby was moving frantically inside her, and all she could think was, please, please be okay. Her hands shook as she pressed them against her belly, tears streaming down her face. The security team wrestled Selena into a corner while the nurse knelt beside Amelia, checking her vitals with quick, professional movements. "We need a doctor here now." Patient is 28 weeks pregnant, showing signs of distress. Through her blurred vision, Amelia saw Selena straightening her silk blouse, suddenly composed, her face transforming into a mask of wounded innocence as 2 police officers rounded the corner. "Officers, thank God you're here," Selena said, her voice trembling perfectly. "That woman went crazy. I just came to visit my friend's wife, and she attacked me out of nowhere. I was only defending myself." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment even Amelia wondered if she'd imagined the last 5 minutes. But then she felt the scratches burning on her cheek, the ache in her ribs where Selena had shoved her, and rage cut through the fear. "That's not." Amelia started, but her voice came out as a weak rasp. "Ma'am, we'll need to get your statement," one officer said to Amelia, but his tone was already skeptical. Here was a disheveled, crying pregnant woman against a calm, collected socialite in a $5,000 outfit. Amelia could see him trying to decide which story made more sense. Before anyone could say another word, the air in the corridor changed. It was like a drop in temperature, a shift in atmospheric pressure that made everyone turn toward the elevators. Alexander Hartman stepped out, and the world seemed to rearrange itself around him. He wasn't tall, maybe 6 feet, but he carried himself like someone who'd never heard the word no and meant it. Salt and pepper hair swept back from a face carved from granite and money. His suit probably cost more than most people's cars, and he wore it like armor. But it was his eyes that made Amelia's breath catch, storm gray, cold, and absolutely focused on her. Her father, the man she'd barely spoken to in 3 years, not since she'd married Nathaniel against his advice. "Amelia." His voice was quiet, but it cut through the commotion like a blade. He crossed the distance between them in 4 strides, kneeling beside her with a grace that contradicted his age. His hands hovered near her face, not quite touching the scratches. "Are you hurt? Is the baby?" "We're okay," she whispered. "Dad, shoo." His finger touched her lips, gentle as a butterfly. Then he stood, turning to face the room, and Amelia saw the transformation. The concerned father vanished, replaced by something else entirely. Something dangerous. "You," he said, pointing at Selena. "Don't move." Selena's confident mask cracked just slightly. "I don't know who you think you are, but—" "Alexander Hartman." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I own this hospital. I own 3 of the firms representing you. I own significant shares in your father's import company and your brother's tech startup." He paused, letting that sink in. "And you just assaulted my pregnant daughter." The silence that followed was deafening. One of the police officers cleared his throat. "Mr. Hartman, we're still establishing what happened here." "Then let me help you with that." Alexander pulled out his phone, tapped twice, and held it up. "I've already accessed the security footage from cameras 7, 9, and 12. Would you like to see the part where Miss Chun here initiated physical contact? Or perhaps the moment she shoved my daughter against the wall while knowing she was 7 months pregnant?" Selena's face went white. "You can't. That's not." She turned to the officers. He's manipulating evidence. He's trying to cover up what really happened. The footage is time-stamped and backed up to 3 separate servers, Alexander said calmly. I'm happy to provide copies to the police, the district attorney's office, and every major news outlet in the city. Your choice. Alexander turned back to Amelia, and his expression softened just fractionally. They thought you were alone. They were wrong. 2 hours later, Amelia sat in a private hospital room while doctors monitored the baby's heartbeat. The steady thump-thump-thump on the monitor was the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. Alexander stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low but intense. I don't care what time it is in Singapore. Get me every communication between Nathaniel Hartwell and Selena Chen for the past 18 months. Emails, texts, hotel records, everything. A pause. No, I don't want to wait for subpoenas. That's why I pay you. He hung up and turned to Amelia. How are you feeling? Confused, she admitted. Dad, how did you even know I was here? Your husband didn't tell you? Something flickered across Alexander's face, something that might have been pity. He called me 6 hours ago. Said you'd gone into early labor and he couldn't leave a business meeting. Asked if I could check on you. The words hit Amelia like a physical blow. Nathaniel had called her father, but not come himself? There was no early labor, she said slowly. I was here for a routine checkup. I know. Alexander's jaw tightened. I called your doctor before I came. She said your appointment was routine and you were fine. He moved to sit beside her bed. Amelia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. How long has Nathaniel been having an affair with Selena Chen? The question shouldn't have surprised her, but it did. Maybe because hearing it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. All those late nights at the office. The phone calls he took in another room. The smell of unfamiliar perfume. I don't know, she whispered. I suspected, but I thought I was being paranoid. Hormones, you know. She laughed, but it came out broken. I'm such an idiot. No, Alexander's hand covered hers, warm and solid. You're a woman who tried to trust her husband. That doesn't make you an idiot. That makes you decent. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression went cold. But decency won't protect you from what's coming next. What do you mean? He turned the phone toward her. On the screen was a news article, posted 20 minutes ago. Billionaire's daughter unstable? Sources close to Hartwell family suggest pregnancy complications affecting mental health. Amelia's hands went numb. That's a lie. All of it. Of course it is. Alexander stood, pocketing his phone. But it's a good lie, professionally constructed and strategically leaked. Nathaniel's trying to control the narrative before the story about Selena's assault goes public. He's painting you as unreliable, possibly delusional. He looked at her, and for the first time since arriving, she saw real anger in his eyes. He's trying to destroy your credibility so that when this goes to court, no one will believe you. Can he do that? He's already doing it. Alexander moved to the door, then paused. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we go to war. Over the next 3 days, Amelia watched her father orchestrate a campaign that was part investigation, part psychological warfare, and entirely terrifying in its precision. His security team retrieved CCTV footage from not just the hospital, but from every location Nathaniel and Selena had visited together over the past year. Restaurants, hotels, his downtown apartment that Amelia hadn't known existed. The evidence was damning and comprehensive. Meanwhile, Nathaniel's lawyers launched their own offensive. More articles appeared, each one carefully worded to avoid libel, while implying that Amelia had a history of emotional instability. Anonymous sources, people she'd never met, claimed she'd been acting erratically throughout her pregnancy. One article even suggested she'd attacked Selena out of jealousy. They're good, Alexander admitted over dinner in her hospital room on the 3rd evening. Nathaniel hired the Schulman firm. Best PR crisis managers in the country. So what do we do? Amelia pushed food around her plate, her appetite gone. We let them think they're winning. Alexander smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. And then we do something they won't expect. Which is, we throw a party. The Hartman Foundation Gala was scheduled for Friday evening, 2 weeks after the assault. It was an annual event, usually boring. Rich people writing checks while pretending to care about whatever cause Alexander had chosen that year. This year's theme was childhood literacy, according to the elegant invitations that went out to every major player in the city's social and business circles. Nathaniel and Selena both received invitations. Of course they did. Are you sure about this? Amelia asked her father the morning of the gala. She was being discharged from the hospital that day. Baby still healthy. Her physical injuries healed even if the emotional ones felt raw and fresh. What if they don't come? They'll come. Alexander adjusted his tie in the mirror. Nathaniel needs to be seen in public, looking confident and unbothered. And Selena's father is one of my major business partners. He'll insist she attend to smooth things over. He turned to her. But you don't have to be there if you're not ready. Amelia thought about that. About hiding while Nathaniel and Selena showed up at her father's gala, smiling and laughing and pretending they hadn't destroyed her life. About all the people who'd read those articles and believed she was unstable, unreliable, crazy. I'll be there, she said. I want to watch. The gala was held at the Meridian Hotel, in a ballroom that could hold 300 people comfortably. By 7 p.m., it was packed with the city's elite, politicians, CEOs, socialites, and enough old money to buy a small country. Champagne flowed. A string quartet played Vivaldi. Everything was beautiful and civilized and fake. Amelia stood in a private room off the main ballroom, watching through a one-way mirror as guests mingled below. She wore a navy maternity gown that her father had commissioned from his favorite designer, elegant and expensive enough to make a statement. She looked like money and power and untouchable grace, even if inside she felt like she might throw up. They just arrived, Alexander said softly beside her. Amelia's eyes found them immediately. Nathaniel, her husband, looking relaxed in his tuxedo, working the room like he owned it. And beside him, not even trying to hide anymore, was Selena. She wore red, bold, defiant, beautiful. They looked like the perfect couple. Amelia's hands clenched into fists. The evening progressed exactly as these things always did. Dinner was served. Speeches were made. Alexander took the stage around 8:30, thanking everyone for their generosity and support. He talked about childhood literacy, about giving every child the chance to discover the magic of reading. Then he paused. But before we continue, he said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom, I want to share something else with you. A different kind of story. He nodded to someone offstage. If we could dim the lights, please. The chandeliers faded. A massive screen descended from the ceiling behind Alexander. Amelia felt her heart start to pound. 2 weeks ago, Alexander continued, my daughter was assaulted while 7 months pregnant. The person who attacked her claimed self-defense. Claimed my daughter was unstable, dangerous, the aggressor. He paused. I think you should see for yourselves. The screen flickered to life. The footage was crystal clear, professionally edited, with timestamps visible in the corner. It showed Amelia standing in the hospital corridor, alone, waiting. Then Selena entering the frame, her body language aggressive from the first second. The confrontation was brief and brutal, Selena's hands shoving, striking, Amelia trying to protect her stomach, trying to get away. There was no audio, but somehow that made it worse. The violence was stark and undeniable. The ballroom erupted. Gasps. Shouts. The sound of chairs scraping as people stood. Phones came out immediately. Of course they did. This was the story of the year. And Amelia watched as 300 people started recording, photographing, tweeting, and posting in real time. On the screen, the footage ended, replaced by text. Selena Chun was arrested but released on bail within hours. No charges filed. No consequences. Until tonight. The lights came back up. Selena was frozen at her table, her face white as paper. Nathaniel was on his feet, looking around wildly like a trapped animal. Security guards materialized at every exit. Miss Chun, Alexander said calmly from the stage. There are police officers waiting outside to take you into custody. Official charges are being filed tonight. Assault, endangerment of a minor, filing a false police report. He paused. Your bail is revoked effective immediately. 2 officers entered through the main doors. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as they walked toward Selena's table. She stood, trembling, her earlier confidence shattered. This is insane, Nathaniel shouted, trying to position himself between Selena and the officers. You can't do this. This is a setup. Actually, Alexander said, we can. We have 17 angles of security footage, timestamps, witness statements from hospital staff, and medical records documenting my daughter's injuries. He descended from the stage. moving through the crowd with the grace of a predator. We also have evidence that you attempted to bribe 3 different media outlets to suppress the story. That's obstruction of justice, by the way. Nathaniel's face went from red to white to gray in the space of 3 seconds. The officers handcuffed Selena. Someone in the crowd took a photo, the flash bright and damning. Selena was crying now, mascara running down her face, all her beauty and poise destroyed in an instant. "Nathaniel, please," she sobbed as they led her toward the doors. "Don't let them." But Nathaniel was already backing away, distancing himself, and Amelia saw the exact moment Selena realized he wasn't going to save her. The betrayal on her face was almost painful to watch. Almost. The doors closed behind Selena and the officers. The ballroom remained silent for a long moment, 300 people processing what they'd just witnessed. Then the whispers started, building into a roar of conversation. Amelia knew that by morning, the footage would be everywhere. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every gossip column in the world. Her father had just weaponized publicity in a way that would haunt Selena and Nathaniel for the rest of their lives. And Amelia felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. If you've made it this far, smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. This story isn't over yet. The trial took 3 months to unfold. Amelia sat in the courtroom every single day, her belly growing larger as the baby inside her grew stronger. She listened to testimony from hospital staff, security experts, and forensic analysts. She watched Selena's lawyers try to discredit the footage, to argue that Alexander had manipulated evidence, to suggest that Amelia had somehow provoked the attack. None of it worked. The evidence was too strong, too comprehensive, too undeniable. And the public narrative had already been written the night of the gala. Selena Chin wasn't a victim. She was a violent mistress who'd attacked a pregnant woman and then tried to lie her way out of consequences. Nathaniel was subpoenaed to testify. Amelia watched him squirm on the witness stand as the prosecution presented text messages between him and Selena, hotel receipts, credit card statements showing gifts purchased during his supposed business trips. 18 months of deception laid bare in black and white. "Did you instruct Miss Chun to confront your wife at the hospital on the day in question?" the prosecutor asked. "No," Nathaniel said quickly. "Too quickly. I didn't know she was going to be there. But you did tell Miss Chin that your wife would be at the hospital that day for an appointment, correct?" Nathaniel's jaw worked. "I may have mentioned it. In passing. And you called your father-in-law to check on your wife, but didn't go yourself because of a business meeting. What was that meeting regarding?" Silence. "Mr. Hartwell? I don't remember." "You don't remember a meeting so important you couldn't check on your 7 months pregnant wife in the hospital?" The prosecutor smiled. "Strange. Because according to your calendar, submitted as evidence, you had no meeting scheduled that day. What you did have was a 2-hour lunch reservation at Marcel's with Miss Chun." The courtroom erupted. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. In the end, Selena was convicted on 3 counts: assault, child endangerment, and filing a false police report. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, 5 years probation, and mandatory anger management counseling. Nathaniel wasn't criminally charged, but the divorce proceedings Amelia initiated stripped him of everything. The prenup he'd insisted on signing, the one that heavily favored him, turned out to have a clause about infidelity that Alexander's lawyers exploited ruthlessly. Nathaniel lost the apartment, most of his assets, and any claim to custody of the baby. He also lost his job when his firm quietly let him go after the publicity disaster. "It's over," Alexander told Amelia the day the divorce was finalized. They sat in his office, overlooking the city that had once whispered about her instability and now called her brave. "You're free." Amelia looked down at her hands, at the slight swell of her belly. 8 months now, almost time. "I don't feel free. I feel hollow." "That's normal." Her father stood, moving to the window. "Revenge doesn't fill the spaces people create when they hurt us. It just balances the scales a little." "Then what does fill those spaces?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Then, purpose. Building something better than what was destroyed." 2 weeks later, Amelia gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Grace, because if life had taught her anything, it was that grace, both giving and receiving it, was the only thing worth fighting for. But even holding her daughter, feeling that perfect weight in her arms, Amelia knew her father was right. Revenge had balanced the scales, but it hadn't healed anything. So 3 months after Grace was born, the Hartman family made an announcement that shocked the city almost as much as the gala footage had. They were launching the Hartman Foundation for Maternal Safety, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting pregnant women from domestic violence, providing legal resources, and funding security measures in hospitals nationwide. Amelia would serve as director. Alexander would provide the funding, and they'd recruited a dozen high-profile advocates, including 2 senators and the head of the largest women's rights organization in the country. Why this? A reporter asked at the press conference. Why not just move on? Amelia adjusted Grace in her arms and looked directly at the camera. Because what happened to me happens to thousands of women every year. They're vulnerable, and sometimes the people who should protect them are the ones who hurt them most. She paused. I had resources. I had my father's money and power behind me. Most women don't. This foundation is for them. The press conference went viral. Within a week, donations poured in from across the country. Major hospitals signed on to implement new security protocols. Politicians who'd ignored domestic violence legislation for years suddenly found themselves pressured to act. Amelia became a voice for something bigger than her own pain. And slowly, gradually, the hollow spaces inside her started to fill with something that felt like purpose. 6 months after Grace was born, things finally felt stable. Amelia had moved into a new apartment, decorated it herself, built a life that was entirely hers. The foundation was thriving. Grace was healthy and perfect and laughing at everything. Nathaniel had moved to another city, his reputation destroyed, his connections severed. Selena was in prison, serving her sentence far from the spotlight she'd once craved. Justice had been served. Life was moving forward. And then the package arrived. It was small, wrapped in brown paper, with no return address. Amelia almost threw it away. She'd learned to be suspicious of unsolicited mail after receiving several threatening letters from Selena's supporters. But something made her open it. Inside was a burner phone. Just that, nothing else. As she held it, the phone buzzed. A text message appeared on the screen from a blocked number. Congratulations on your foundation. Very noble. But you should know, Selena was only the surface. There are people who aren't happy about what your family did. People with resources. With patience. This isn't over, Amelia. It's just beginning. The phone buzzed again. Another message. Watch your daughter. Amelia's hands went numb. The phone clattered to the floor as she spun toward Grace's nursery, her heart hammering. She burst through the door, but Grace was fine, sleeping peacefully in her crib, her little chest rising and falling with perfect rhythm. Amelia sagged against the doorframe, trembling. Then she grabbed her personal phone and called her father. Dad, she said when he answered. We have a problem. Alexander's voice went cold. I'm on my way. 30 minutes later, he stood in her apartment, examining the burner phone with the same focused intensity he'd brought to destroying Selena and Nathaniel. His security team swept the apartment for bugs or cameras, finding nothing. The phone itself was untraceable, designed to be disposable, anonymous. This is professional, Alexander said quietly. Not some angry friend of Selena's. Whoever sent this has training, resources, and a specific goal, which is fear. He looked at her. They want you to know you're vulnerable. That Grace is vulnerable. That all your money and power can't protect you from someone determined enough. Amelia felt rage cut through her terror. Then what do we do? Alexander set the phone down carefully. We do what we always do. We find them, we expose them, and we destroy them before they can destroy us. He paused. But Amelia, this is different from Nathaniel and Selena. They were emotional, reckless, predictable. Whoever sent this message is none of those things. Are you saying we can't win? I'm saying it won't be easy. He moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. But yes, we can win. We will win. Because they made one critical mistake. What's that? Alexander turned back to her, and his smile was sharp as broken glass. They threatened my granddaughter. The apartment fell silent except for Grace's soft breathing from the nursery. Outside, the city glittered and pulsed, full of people and secrets and threats hiding in plain sight. Amelia picked up the burner phone, staring at the message. Watch your daughter. Let them try, she whispered. And somewhere in the darkness of the city, someone was watching, waiting, planning their next move in a game that was only just beginning. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because the next chapter of this story is going to change everything. Drop a comment telling me what you think is coming next. I read every single one. And if this story got your heart racing, share it with someone who needs to see that justice is possible, even when the odds seem impossible. This was just the beginning.